You're listening to The Accidental Exile, stories of cities, strangers, and silence, and the people that we become when we leave too much behind. I'm in a private dining room the size of a small football stadium, and a Chinese billionaire is singing a karaoke song to me. This is how my life is now. I've just done 2 weeks in a quarantine hotel in which I more or less lost my mind. The road to quarantine was a jungle infested with QR codes. I am more processed than American cheese. Pandemic-era China is the result of an ill-advised one-night stand between the Kafkaesque bureaucracy of Soviet Russia married to the rampant consumerism of America. When I say quarantine hotel, don't think of how you might do it in the UK, Europe or America. On arrival in China, I was processed by a brigade of dystopic orderlies in full hazmat suits, put on a bus and transported to a place I know not where, processed again and deposited in a room, and that was it. Prison. You're in. Step outside the door and the alarms will go off. The hotel itself did at least have that opening scene of Apocalypse Now vibe, and had clearly not been occupied for some time. It had been listlessly cleaned up, but was clearly tired, and from my balcony I could see the activity within a ramshackle field kitchen that had been hastily thrown together to get the place operational. It didn't look promising. The view consisted mostly of a bleached sky over an infinite vista of low-rise semi-industrial buildings splashed with red and gold lettering, and interspersed with palm trees and odd-looking towers that looked as if they could be either guard towers or mobile phone towers. Somewhere in the distance was something industrial, probably a port. I could see the echo of tungsten light from it at night. As the days dragged by, each longer than the last, I imagined, what if everyone simply forgets about me, en masse? My co-workers and colleagues, my paymasters, friends, family, loved ones. What if I just slipped everybody's minds at once? After doing my time, I exited in a state of cabin fever and mild panic, having spent 14 days with nothing to do but yoga, meditation, and eat terrible food. Not the best introduction to a country renowned for its culinary delights. I don't know where I was, but a gnarly bloke turned up in a shabby van and, after a 5-hour drive, deposited me in the gleaming metropolis that is Hangzhou, where I was left in the steel and glass edifice that was to become my home for the next 8 months. Dizzy from 14 days of solitary confinement, I had no idea where I was or even how to function in this place. The next day I was picked up at 8 a.m. and guided to a black SUV, which was joined by a number of other SUVs, in a caravan that resembled a scene from a Don Simpson or Michael Bay movie. We toured around a number of potential locations for a potential project in the countryside that made little sense to me. I was introduced to several men in white shirts, black trousers and shiny shoes, along with several female architects in jeans and sweatshirts. Everyone wore designer glasses. I was wearing Ray-Ban Caravans because David Bowie wore them in The Man Who Fell to Earth. As we toured and pontificated about customer experience, I tried to look relevant by occasionally nodding either seriously or enthusiastically, depending on what I felt was appropriate, which was a gamble because 90% of the conversation was conducted in rapid Chinese. I've been here a few times before, so I have learned to read the room, but picking up the subtleties and nuances of the Chinese is an art at which we in the West have been failing for centuries. To some extent, this is what this book is about. What that is, how I came to appreciate it, and what it did to me. We pulled up on the dusty gravel of a large tract of land surrounded by thorny bushes and a few dilapidated buildings. In the distance were a few pleasant-looking low-lying hills and a gently meandering river. We stepped out of the vehicles and I made my reacquaintance with a few old faces I knew from my previous visits. We swapped cigarettes as a means of social currency and stood around staring at the bracken. I realised why everybody was wearing white shirts. It signalled that the billionaire would be here. Soon after, I sensed the flutter of nervous anticipation as their phones pinged announcing his imminent arrival. An MPV pulled up and he emerged in his usual demeanour of urgency. The assembled crowd parted so the chairman and I could greet. He was clearly pleased that, after 2 years, he had me back on the territory. I'd met him a few times before. We once got slaughtered together, and I'd drawn a portrait of him at the dinner table. Well, what do you give a man who has everything? I had been informed that he liked me. Why else would I be here? It had become something of a fashion amongst the wealthy in China to have your own British designer to cart about the place. But only if you can deliver. You have to be useful in China. They are pragmatic, and in saying so I have probably committed one of history's greatest understatements. But knowing this is what will help me to survive here. We pointed at bits of the landscape in a meaningful manner. One of the sites we stopped at was a stone's throw from where the Communist Party held its first thing. That was hard to countenance, to stand on the soil where it began, to actually be here in the present moment with the knowledge of what that led to screaming in the back of your mind, while the people around you are talking about brand and strategies and family-oriented leisure offerings. You only need the vaguest knowledge of history for such a moment to do your head in, and my head was done in, as it was to be all day, every day, for the next 8 months. The Accidental Exile is written and read by me, Finley Cowan. If this story spoke to you, subscribe, find more on YouTube and Patreon. Let's keep the conversation unfinished.